Dean, welcome to the TEXO podcast. Who is Dean Sutherland?
A young man with a lot of ambitions and being able to do what I love to do, is being a professional boxer.
So what's your career path been so far, and who's influenced you as a person?
So the big thing, I always wanted to be a full-time athlete. Always wanted to do it when I was a kid. Didn't really matter what it was going to be. I just knew I didn't want to work a regular 9-to-5 sort of job. As you get older, you understand as well that you've got responsibilities, you need a roof over your head, you've got bills and that to pay. So when I was leaving school, I decided I was going to do an apprenticeship in being a sparky. Absolutely loved it, really enjoyed, loved the banter out on site, loved seeing the guys, and I was quite good at the job, but it was never ever something that I wanted to stick at full time. So when I was doing my apprenticeship, I went into professional boxing. As I got through, finished my apprenticeship, went and moved to a different company, was there for about a year, and then managed to get in touch with yourselves, with Chris at Texo, and gave me the opportunity to change my life and do what I wanted to do for a dream.
How influential have the people around you been?
Very much so. I think if you're not round about people that is going to inspire you and push you, then it can be very, very subdued. You can kind of just get dragged down with everybody else. It's a lot easier to get picked up with negative emotions than it is with positive ones.
Yeah.
So if you're out with people that's constantly down in the dumps or drewer or has no real ambition, you're going to get caught up with it. So for myself, it was always being in gyms that had people that was better than me. So I had somebody to chase all the time, and that's even when I've got into professional boxing. You always I'm looking at the rankings. Every single person that's above me is somebody that I've got to chase. There's always ambitions to keep going. But
they're targets, though, aren't they? Rather than
they're targets, but
influencers.
But also influence, because
Right.
the guys that everybody that's above me is got more wins on their record than I do, and they've got more titles or on bigger platforms and anything like that. So although they are targets, as you would say, I'm never going to fight every single one of them, and I know that personally. So it's just looking at them, taking a bit of inspiration, but also looking at the guys who's done professional boxing, who's achieved the tip of the mountain, basically.
Yeah.
That's who you're always wanting to be inspired towards.
And I was expecting you to say your mum or your dad.
Oh, very much. They've always
But
had.
you left them out, so
no.
I hope they're not going to listen to this.
They've always had a great impact on me, and without them, I 1000% wouldn't be in the same situation as what I am. They've always gave me the drive, gave me the opportunity, sacrificed loads of their own time to be able to. When I was younger, I was training 5-6 nights a week. They were taking me to competitions all over the UK, even in Europe sometimes. That took a lot of not only time but finance to be able to do that on something of a sport that I love to do, and wasn't getting any financial benefit on the outside. It was more just from achievement, and they kind of knew this is what he loves to do. Let's see how far he can go, and that wouldn't have continued for how long it did if I wasn't winning in the nicest possible way. If I wasn't very good at it, then it probably would have stopped pretty quickly. But
Well, that was one of the rules, was it? If you're not winning, that's it, you're out.
It was an unspoken rule, let's maybe say that. But it was definitely, soon as I got to it, I had my first competition just after I was 5 years old. Came away with 2 gold medals in that competition, and that kind of set the standards of everything that I was going to do. It was every competition I've went to, I've always walked away with a medal. So I've always had some success going to it.
How difficult is it breaking out of being non-competitive as a professional, from being non-professional to professional? How do you break out of the non-professional to get into that professional? It must be amazingly difficult.
It's a big difference, because when you're just doing it as a sport or a hobby, if you're as an amateur, it's just for the love and the passion of the sport that you're doing it. When you go professional, it's a whole different ballgame. You become a business, a brand. You've got to not only focus on the sport, but you've got to focus on the whole package around. But
that's a really important thing, is it? It's like, as a hobby, you take most hobbies on because you have a passion for it. And when it goes from being an amateur to a professional, can you lose that passion?
1000%.
And it becomes a business and you become a commodity. How do you balance that out?
Sometimes you've got to bring yourself back to why you fell in love with the sport in the first point. Like I always like going back and looking at like my first taekwondo or first kickboxing competitions, looking at pictures, all the young medals and that I've got when I was a tiny toot. The body shield wouldn't fit me, the head guard was too big, the gloves were up to about my elbow at the time. That's the reason that you got into the sport, and that was why you were driven to do it every single day. There was no benefit really from a financial side. You just, for instance, me, I used to get up, I would go to train or run, go to school, and then train again in the evening, and that was my whole life. My friends and I would see whenever I possibly could, most of the time at school, but for me it was just the love and drive of the sport. When it goes to the professional side, it's trying to get that right balance. You don't want to be too business orientated, because then the passion side of it goes, and you don't want to be just so passionate about the sport but forget everything else, because then you're never going to.
Have you been close to losing that
very
those original hooks?
Definitely. I think for instance, like with me picking up my injury, that was definitely one of the big things that I'd been too stubborn to stop fighting. I'd picked the injury up at the end of last year, ended up having 2 fights this year while I was in a lot of pain during it, and it made the whole training camp and the experience not as enjoyable as what it should have. And when you look back at it, I was in quite a lot of discomfort, wasn't enjoying the training because of the pain, but then I've still got to go out and perform. And then the business side, especially where you're in the small hall side of things for professional boxing, it's all on ticket sales. There's a cap on how much money you're going to make. There's a certain level of opposition you're going to get to. So it's like trying to put all that into place. And for instance, when I moved down to London, it was a huge expense to move my training camp down to London. For then what I got in return was a loss when it comes down to it. The last 3 fights that I've had, and the next one that I go on to is a loss. But it's finding that passion for the sport is the only thing that's going to keep driving you on.
What's the world of boxing like? And you can spend a whole week talking about this.
I could go right into it if you wanted to. But
in a way, I suppose, what's the lure to the world of boxing, and what are the things that irritate you?
First of all, like, you get into the professional boxing because you want to be successful. That was my whole drive going into it. I wanted to take myself to the next level. I'd achieved everything that I wanted to or possibly could do in the kickboxing. Being a professional athlete, the professional boxing was the route I wanted to go instead of the professional MMA. Much more prefer the boxing. And as soon as I've got into it, I've absolutely loved it. And my real ambition that I really want to do is to win the British title. That's legacy for myself. I'll be the first from Aberdeen to win it, and that's a landmark nobody else can take away. But I just want to push myself to see how far I can go. That's what really drives me when it comes down to it. I'm not putting ceilings on myself like, oh, I only want to have this amount of fights, or I only want to win this title. For instance, that's the goal that I want to do, is win the British, but I don't stop at the British. I want to keep going on and win as much as I possibly can. But when it comes down to the true roots of boxing, it's not all glitz and glam that everybody thinks.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, from the side that it is just now, everybody thinks professional boxers are on
tens of millions,
Mayweather money, Anthony Joshua rolling about in Rolls Royces and picking up mansions for fun. It does not work like that whatsoever. There's categories that you get into professional boxing. When you obviously get to Anthony Joshua, Floyd Mayweather, that side of money, that's less than 1% of them that will get to that.
Is that different? Is that the different weights? Is it?
No, it's nothing really to do with the weights, because the highest paid professional boxer is Canelo Alvarez just now.
Right.
A Mexican, unbelievable. Like, for his last fight, was $50 million that he'd got for it. It's serious sort of money that you're talking about. But when it comes down to, for instance, the small hall shows the way it is just now, it's the only thing that really guarantees you getting a wage is how many tickets that you sell.
Right.
When it comes down to it. And then once you get to a certain level of that, like for instance myself, I've kind of got a ceiling of how much money I'm going to be able to make at this. The next level is when you get signed by a TV company onto the TV deals. Then you go into a new bracket, then you become favourites in the TV, you go up another bracket. So that's where it's segregated out. Although we're all classed as professional boxers, there's a huge difference in the financial side of things when it comes to starting off where, for instance, where I am, no TV backing, didn't have a huge amateur career or anything like that, winning titles, but it all comes down to selling tickets, and especially having a great local support, great sponsors like Texo. Obviously, without that, it's near enough impossible to continue to do. But the goal is to keep going up that levels, and obviously everybody wants to be financially secure, and that's obviously why we are classed as prize fighters. We technically fight for money at the end of the day, and for that you need to continue to go up the levels and publicise yourself.
I don't think people listening to this will probably understand the world of boxing is that I know you have a management team around you, but you've got to do a lot of that work. Mm-hmm. You've got to make sure that the ticket sales are being sold.
Yeah.
The venues booked. You're part of that machine.
You're very much one of the main cogs that gets a show to run. For instance,
and you've got to turn up and have a fight.
Yeah, nobody sells the tickets for myself. I've got to be the one that organises all the tickets. I'm the one that either drops off personally or sends the tickets out to the people. I'm the one that's got to collect the money. I've got to give the money to my manager. He's obviously organising the event and selecting the opponent that I'm fighting. But when it comes to the ticket sales side of things, most of the publicity is done by myself through self-drive on social media. That comes down to me. So you're not only just a fighter and a professional athlete trying to focus on yourself and your craft, you've also got to focus on everything else to even get the show to go ahead. When it comes down to, I had it twice last year where I had fights pull out on short notice from the show. I had one 10 days before that the show got cancelled, and I had my show got cancelled on the day because of the Queen passing. People don't realise that as professional boxers, we don't get paid until we've had our fight. So I had spent a lot of my own money in the training camps that don't get reimbursed. Nobody's like, oh, here's the money and I hand back to you. I've got to give the money back for all the tickets, but then I'm still the one that took a huge loss. It turned out it was about £6,000 worth I'd lost last year through 2 fights getting cancelled. Nobody else pays that for me. So without, for instance, sponsors like yourselves, it's impossible. It's below minimum wage when it comes down to it. I'd be better off being back on the tools. Yeah. But I've got the ambitions to take myself to that next level and continue to progress and obviously win titles.
We'll come on to the Texo Association in a minute. I'm going to ask you a sticky question. What's it like to lose?
It's not nice. Nobody wants to lose, but it's been a huge learning curve for myself. Yeah. It was something that...
And I am going to ask you what it's like to win.
Oh, well,
I started off with the losing because it's important for people to listen about in their world. Mm-hmm. Not everything is rosy.
No, definitely.
They have ups and they have downs. So when you have a down, mm-hmm. how do you pick yourself out? What's that process?
It's very hard because when it comes down to, for instance, if you lost out on a deal at work or you lost a football game or anything like that, it kind of gets knocked and you just proceed. But for instance, for myself, this was my first professional boxing loss. I'd spent 14 weeks of my life full training, took myself away to LA to get extra training. We travelled all over the UK for sparring. I'd spent 14 weeks of my life preparing for one night, and nothing went right for me, and I got beat.
And you were injured though, were you? In that, did you have a shoulder injury at the time? Not an excuse.
No, no excuse whatsoever. I had a tiny niggle, but it's not anything. The whole performance itself, nothing went right for me on the night. Everything in the build-up went perfect, and the one night, in the one moment you want it all to go right, nothing went for me. Right. So that was a hard pill to swallow, but it's something that you just need to be open and honest with. I can't go back and change it. I can only live and learn from it. What if I took from the opportunity? Don't get me wrong, I had good moments as well. That's a big thing as well. You've got to consider. Although I got beat, I still did good things in the build-up to it. I still did good things in the fight, but I did more negatives than positives. So it was really hard for me to take, especially the first 2-3 days. Really sunk in and it was really tough. But that's when you've got to have close family, girlfriend, friends that are able to help you get out of it. And then soon as it took about a week or so, you get people staring at you with the big black eyes. You have a little laugh and a joke about it and get over it, because it's not the end of the world. At the end of the day, it was one loss. I decided that one loss was never going to set me back. Let's really just get right back into the swing of things. So I'd fought, I think it was 9 weeks later, just went straight back into it. A week or so off, and then went straight back into it, go back into the winning category, and just wanted to move my career.
Did it help you?
Definitely.
In your career? Does it help you to, because you see some of these fighters that go through their career almost, you look at and they've won every single fight, and when they lose, it just destroys them in a way. And has it made you stronger?
1,000%.
More determined?
1,000%. It definitely has. And it also then helped me make decisions on what I was going to do next in my career to take me to the next level. Whereas before, if I'd won the fight, they probably get bent to the side and you never really think about them again. But because I got beat, you've got to sit down and analyse, right, what did I do good? What did I do wrong? Where could I improve? And then that's only going to help you move forward in my career. And it's never dented my confidence side of things. It's happened, it's done, it's dusted. I got beaten taekwondo, I got beaten kickboxing. You get beaten life in certain things. It happens, so you just got to move on from it.
I always say to people, especially interesting in my kids, I said, what's it, when they've failed at something, I said, what's it feel like? And they go, oof, not good. I said, so, and what did it feel like to win that? Oh, brilliant. And I said, so which one's better? And then they said, well, obviously to win. I said, well, you know what it feels like to fail. What does it feel like to win? And
to feel like to win, it feels an accomplishment, because it's not something that just happens. It's not, you don't click your fingers and I'm like, oh yeah, I've won the fight, I get my hand raised. It's a lot of hard work, sacrifice, determination that goes into a huge period of time. It's not just turn up on fight night, have the fight and win. It's not a Saturday night brawl down the pub or anything like that. It's when you're going up and up in the levels, it's a lot of time that you spend in the preparation for it. So the first feeling that you get is huge excitement. The next one that comes is a relief, because you've also invested such a long period of time, sacrificed things, that to have that overwhelming feeling of winning and have the close people around about you that know exactly what you've been through to see. And
they celebrate with you as well.
Definitely, I think,
because they've gone through. A lot of people don't realise that the people around you sacrifice, part of that journey.
Very much so. For instance, like my last fight, I'd moved myself away down to London for 11 and a half weeks. I seen my girlfriend for 3 days. Seen my mum and dad for 3 days. So, like, they've invested just as much. Yes, they weren't the one moving away and changing up route, but their life changed to benefit me going forward as well. So you've just got to hugely appreciate them, be grateful for them, and to have them there when you win, have their support is all that really matters.
When you're in the ring, it's interesting actually. I want to know, I'd love to know, and the listeners love it, when you're walking towards the ring, what do you think about? And when you get in the ring, what are you thinking about?
When you're going to the ring, especially,
because you look nasty when you're walking down that thing. There's a lot of sort of like, I'm thinking, he's looking focused.
There's a lot of determination. There is definitely a switch that goes, that you can hear everybody. You can't really pick too many people out.
What about your girlfriend screaming?
When it comes to fight nights, I can hear my coach and my mum. My mum's one of the only voices that I can pick clear as day out. Whatever she shouts, I'm like, Lisa, come on. I can hear it. She's like, keep your hands up. I'm like, I intend to. I'm not meaning to get punched in the face.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So you can isolate.
It's really, really strange. You're so focused in, but there's only certain people you could hear. Kind of like a muffled if people's chanting, if there's loads of people, but there's particular people that you could pick out clear as day, that everybody else goes mute and you can hear that voice. And it's really, really weird feeling, but that's when you know that you're zoned in and switched on. If you can hear everybody that's going on, that's the same as when I'm walking to the ring, it blurs out. It goes real muffled noise because I'm solely focused on what I'm here to do. Beforehand, waiting to go out for the walk, I can hear everybody clear. But as soon as I make that walk, I make a little switch. And when I get myself into the ring, I have a little acclamation that I say to myself of calm, collected, and in command. And I always say that to myself, repeat it. I do it earlier on when I'm getting warmed up in the change room, but when I'm in the ring, you'll see me pacing. A lot of people think, why is he speaking to himself? But that's what I'm repeating to myself out loud, and just that gets me relaxed, but also right on focus of what I've got to do.
Have you had any sort of like inspirational managers of other sports come in and give you any sort of psychological influence? I'll give you an example. And when England won the last World Cup, so I think it was Sir Alex Ferguson came in and gave them a speech about the mentality, the way they needed to sort of behave, and they focus. It gave them a different aspect from a different sport.
Yeah. I don't have anybody that would come in to say that. I work with a lifestyle mental coach that we work on loads of things like the acronyms or just changing your point of view in the words that you use from maybe a slightly more negative word to a more positive one. Like a lot of people ask me, am I nervous? And I say, no, I'm excited. Because the exact same reaction.
I won't ask you that.
What's positive, what's negative?
Hold on, let me just cross that off my list. No.
But in the build-up throughout training camp, I particularly listen to loads of motivational videos. Absolutely love the stuff. If you're getting up early and you go for a run, you look at something that's pouring rain, you're like, oh, do I have to? I love putting on a motivational video to get me up and go. I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, a huge Kobe Bryant fan. But then even people, for instance, like David Goggins or anybody that's just willing to push themselves to that next level, because it's very, very easy to stay nice and comfortable, cozy, wrapped up inside, but to really push yourself out of your comfort zone, you need to take yourself out of your comfort zone. You really do, and you need to take inspiration and get motivation, because you're never ever going to be 100% I'm up and I'm ready to go for it every single time. But the sessions that you don't want to do, that you do, that's the ones that make a difference.
What's the best part of the sport and the least favourite part? Is it a sport for you now, or is it a career? I know we touched on that at the beginning. So if someone says to them, what's the best part about the sport? I suppose you can talk about the sport in general, but in terms of your career and the way that you as a professional boxer, what's the least and the most favourite part of it?
The least favourite, I would probably say, has to come down to the overall.
You're not going to get judged on this.
No. Honestly, it's hard because I love the job that I do, love the career, and it's not a typical job for me. It's a career. I'm passionate about it. Every single day I want to get up, even if it's a rest day, I still watch boxing. I'll watch boxing the next day. It's something I'm just purely passionate about. People's got football and they might go and play their 5-a-side if they want 10. They don't need to do it at a professional level to care about it. But it's hard. Like, for instance, I would say the hardest part, or the least favourite part of the career, would be the business side of things. Yeah. Trying to enjoy the social media side of things. I enjoy meeting with sponsors and speaking to people about the sport, or being involved, because I'm quite an open person when it comes to it, and like chatting and having new social experiences with people. But the hard or more negative bit about the sport, I would say, would be the business side of things, especially at the level that I'm at just now, where you're putting in the exact same effort and energy as what the guys are above you. You're just getting less of a reward, what it feels like at the end of the day as well. And the favourite part about it is just, I'm a professional boxer. I get to do what I love to do. That is the number one most favourable thing. And the best thing about the boxing, for instance, I love the competitive nature that it's got. With boxing, it's not a team sport. It's not, if I have a bad day, I've got to rely on other people. For me, it's me and another person across from me that's planning to do the exact same thing as I want to do. Who's going to be able to implement their strategy and impose themselves on the other person. It's as pure competition as you're going to get. You've got 2 hands, 1 head and 1 heart. It's equal as it comes. You've weighed in at the same weight category before, the day before. You've put the exact same amount of training into it, and you both want to win. How pure is competition?
So when it comes to that, so that's a fascinating. When it comes to sort of like a title fight, I'm not saying that you have certain fights to prepare you for the big ones, and there you are. You're in the ring. You might have seen them walking down. I know you come in at different times. You might have seen them beforehand. You're super focused. What goes through your mind when you've won and that adrenaline is sort of subsided, and you're looking at them as another human being, and you know now what it's like to have lost and those feelings. What do you do? Do you have an opportunity to go and talk to them afterwards?
Yeah.
Do you sort of like consult? It's an interesting position. Only one can win.
Yeah.
Are there draws?
There is draws, but nobody likes a draw, because they both feel like it's a loss.
Right.
And if it's a draw, nobody really wins.
Yeah.
But the big thing about it is combat sports in general is such a weird
because you pummeled the living daylights out of each other for...
Your intentions are to inflict as much damage on them and take as little damage back.
Yeah.
But as soon as the final bell goes, there's instantaneous, immediate respect. The very first thing that you'll see most of the time after a fight is the 2 fighters will hug each other. And it's instantaneous, and it's a bond that can never be taken away.
That's just a weird thing in nature, don't you think? You've just spent the
thing.
last hour or so, or months, preparing, knocking 2 bells out of each other, and all of a sudden you're giving him a hug.
It's instantaneous respect. And when you win or lose, for instance, with myself, I will always be 100% genuine. I was, even on my first loss, straight back into the changing room once I got myself all settled down, went into my opponent's changing room, congratulated them and said safe journey home. Like, that's just my decency. I know I've been on the winning side of things multiple times, so if I'm going to be on the losing side, I'm still going to hold myself with the exact same respect as what I did before. I'm not going to throw a little tantrum, throw my gloves down and be a bad loser at the end of the day. I know the intentions that it comes, how hard they would have worked, because I've done all the same work as them. They just got the result. That's it at the end of the day.
Well, it shows you as a person as well, I think. How important are managers and trainers?
Very much so. The trainer more so than the manager, which is the weird bit, because the manager is the one that's guiding your career.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll have coaches that are your manager. I quite like to keep the 2 separate so I can get 2 different points of views when it comes down to it. But I would definitely say the manager is ideal for looking after your whole career. They're looking to try and guide you to be the best that you possibly can be. The coach is a different relationship, because the manager, you might only see or speak to them 3-4 times in a full training camp.
Right.
A coach you'll spend hours and hours and hours and hours with. It is a different relationship.
So you're almost married to them in a way.
100%.
Yeah.
They become, for instance, like a brotherhood or a father figure side of things. It's all wrapped into one, because at the end of the day, they see all the hard work that's getting put in, but they've also got the main choices when it comes down to if things aren't going my way and I'm being too strong or too stubborn, but I've got the risk of getting hurt. It's him that's then got to take the personal decision of let's pull this, let's save him, help him save to fight another day, basically.
Yeah.
So there's an instant connection really, really quickly. The amount of time that you spend with them, you spend more time with them than you do your girlfriend, your friends or family, your friends, anything at all. You're most of the time, every day, at least 2 to 3 hours. If it's not just in the gym, it's traveling to other gyms for sparring or walking home with them, meeting their family, anything like that.
Yeah.
It's a very, very important relationship that you need to have. And I think it's different for when you look at football managers and they've got a full team. Each person's got to be looked at differently, but it's kind of the same as in a boxing gym. It's not just you and one coach. There'll be other fighters as well that you're a part of a team with. So each relationship and dynamic is different, but the bond that the fighter and the trainer will have is full trust.
Have you ever talked to him about, when he stopped a fight, he stopped something?
No.
I wonder how they feel. Have you ever sort of discussed when that might happen and what the decisions are in a fight when he stops it?
It's something that you don't.
It's like the unwritten rule.
It's kind of like you don't speak about because you never know what the incidents will be. You could be winning the full fight, you get a serious cut, but if you've only got maybe a round or so left, they'll maybe just try patch to get through it. But it'd be a different story if you got a serious injury right away in the fight. Then if you're taking damage perceivably longer and longer, if it's something to do, say for instance, we're an eye injury, every single round that you go out is a chance that you're taking away your eyesight for your future. Boxing at the end of the day, yes, everybody's in it and this is our job, but it's a career at the end of the day. You've got life after boxing you need to look after. So, and nobody wants to be getting punched in the head. And nobody wants to see somebody else that they care about getting that. Especially if it's not going their way, if they're getting seriously injured, if they're coming back and you can tell with their demeanour, if they're losing themselves in the fight, then the nicest and the most caring, thoughtful thing that you could do was to pull that.
It's interesting you said no one gets punched in the face. I can vouch for that. But when you've got that crowd, there's something quite brutal about the sport as well, because you've got this. They go, I've been in the crowds and they're going, "Go on, smack him!" You've zoned all of that out, and obviously you're wanting to make sure that you're not getting, as you said, you're inflicting as much damage to the opposition without getting. It's just. I was admit, because I was saying to Chris Texo MD that it was the first professional boxing when I first watched it. And I was more interested in how the crowds behaved. How do you just think, they're your followers?
Yeah,
they're your fan base.
Yeah, it's weird 'cause it's very, very barbaric when it comes down to it, because people are paying their hard-earned money to come and see two guys or two females.
But there's the crowd's full of women and men at the same time. Their partners are going to it. You just think
it's a weird part of the human connection that's driven to it. Like you don't get the same crowds. Football differences like combat sport. It's a different sort of atmosphere. Yeah, there's more maybe tribalism when it comes to football. But when it comes down to like the combat sport, it's as old as the gladiators.
Exactly.
It goes right back to it. It's as simple as it is. I think Frank Bruno said it. It's basically show business for blood. That's the easiest way that it comes down to it. It's as simple as people doing like the underground, like the cockfighting and stuff like that. Anything. It's the exact same as that, but it's just public entertainment. That's really what it comes down to. We are strictly entertainers, but we use our bodies as our. You get
because I that first fight I went to, I got really drawn into that atmosphere, and it was just electric in terms of the way the people got themselves into a frenzy. No one had come into the ring yet, and I was just like, there were people sort of like jostling around as though they were having their own little fight in the corner, and they were the best of buddies.
Yeah.
And then the second that people got in the ring, it was just like they were there and they were bouncing up and down. I was thinking, wow, this is just like. So anybody who hasn't gone, I would really recommend them to go, because it was just that different. It was energy, but it was like that crescendo at the end of like full of adrenaline, and then I was exhausted, and I hadn't even done anything.
Yeah, the full adrenaline up and down, isn't it?
I was like watching everybody. It was just fascinating.
But it's funny enough though, like when I go and watch an event, if I know somebody that's fighting, I have the exact same emotions. Even I do this as a job, been in boxing gyms years and years, whatever it is. If it's somebody else that I know, I get all the tingles, I get the heart rate, sweaty palms.
Let me in there.
It's not even that, it's just you know what it takes to get in there, but you've also got a personal investment connection to them. That makes it so different. That's why I can never ever understand what my girlfriend, my family, my friends really go through, because I've known them for years and years. But it's just, I'm just like, I'm just go and have a fight. It's just, I enjoy what I do. But for them, it's a whole different up and down of different emotions that goes throughout the whole night. Even if things are going well, and you get like one punch, something like that. I've heard my mum scream loads of
Watch his face! Watch his face!
You hear everything. And you don't hear it at the time, but like looking back at it, there's some serious moments that sticks out, and I'm just like, I had no idea what the rush and up and down of all the emotions that they go through, because I'm so focused on what I do.
What's the relationship with Texo meant, and what's it sort of brought to your career?
Texo allowed me to achieve my dream. That is as simple as that. When it was coming out of COVID, I was still working full time. Things were very, very tough. I was looking to try and go full time at the time. As soon as COVID had obviously hit in, it scattered my plans right back to the start. I ended up reaching out. I was speaking to Chris Smith himself with my dad, and Chris had said Texo would love to come on board and help sponsor me. So Texo has sponsored me for my first fight coming out of COVID, winning the WBO Youth World title at Hamilton Football Stadium. Won that fight, and then the next fight that I had was at the Ballroom for the WBC International Silver title against the former Italian welterweight champion. Beat him, and after that fight, we'd sat down and said, I really, really need to look about going full time. When I looked at myself in the categories, I was like very, very high up in the rankings, and every single person above me was going to be a tough task, especially training part time or still working full time, because it was basically 2 full-time jobs that you do. There's only so much you can do. I was basically burning the candle at both ends when it comes down to it. So we had said, like, let's sit down and speak about possibly going full time. And it wasn't something I'd even spoke to Chris about reaching out again, because they just came on board to help me out and came on and made a massive difference for that first time. But as soon as Chris had seen that we were obviously looking to try and go full time, he made it immediate, as quick as possible. Sat down, made a few phone calls, phoned my dad an hour or so later and said, we'll get something sorted out. And from that day on, I even remembered it was really, really quick for myself. From, I think it was like the start of December, first week of December, that phone call was made, and then said, well, from the Christmas break it'll be a full time. And at the time I was like, it's only like 3 weeks away. And I had loads of things to try and get sorted in a really, really quick time to be able to do it. But since then, it's something that I'm truly grateful for. Could never, like...
Do you miss changing fuses and sparkies?
Still have a little bits and pieces.
Do you ever get asked by mates to sort of...
My mum and dad, they get
can you come and do this?
They get them. And to be fair, when I'd actually picked up my injury and I knew that I wasn't going to be fighting for a while, I did actually consider, would I go back onto the tools just to keep myself ticking over from that side. But when it came down to it, the support that Texos gave me, what they were able to do, I was able to just solely focus on recovering my body as quick as possible. If I'd also went back to work, I'd got a phone call late at night to then get my MRI arthrogram set up for the next day. If I was back working, I would never have been able to take that. And we could be sitting here right now still not having getting that done, because it was, I think they said it was like between 6 months and a year and a half I could be waiting. I'd waited 7 weeks for it. Just made a phone call to go private the day before, and then I got a phone call saying there was a last minute appointment for it to get it done. So that was the big thing that I needed to be able to take the next step, get my recovery process started, and then get the physio, because I knew exactly what the problem was. But without the Texo support and my other sponsors, obviously, that I'd be right back on the tools as quick as I came.
I had the privilege of sort of spending a couple of days with you at the Offshore Europe event when you were sort of like one of the ambassadors. And I just, again, I love people watching, because it's fascinating how some of them, obviously they were from all over the globe. So obviously there was a lot of people that didn't know you. There you were with your what are they called? The shields. The belts. So there you are with your belts, and you've won. And people were like, well, I'll stand next to him. They had no idea who you were. But there were a lot of people who are, from Aberdeen that knew you. And what surprised me was how approachable you were. And we spent a lot of time together, we were having a laugh, and there were people kicking footballs into goals, and we were handing gifts out to people and things like that. Texo's Foundation, which was the whole sort of principle of the event, how important is it for you to be part of that sort of foundation of what Texo were doing? And at the event, did you feel sort of you were giving something back as well to the local community? Because as a role model, especially a youth role model, because that's what Texo Foundation is all about. It's about giving back to sort of grassroots sports.
Very much so.
You know, tell us about those sort of feelings about the foundation.
Realistically, for instance, even when I started off with my kickboxing, I was looking for sponsorship, and this is when it comes back to where Aberdeen was absolutely booming at the time. I think it was on 12 or 13, and I lived up in Cove with my mum and dad. We'd sent an email to 50 different companies roundabout in the Cove industrial area, and one company came back, and it was Asda for a £10 gift voucher. Asda for a £10 gift voucher, and at the time Aberdeen was absolutely booming. Whereas as soon as obviously the opportunity for Texo to come on board, there was no jumping through hoops or anything like that to get. It was straight on as soon as possible. And then even as soon as I said about going full time, I never even thought about asking, because they'd done a massive amount for me already, and they were the first ones to jump on. And obviously Chris said they wanted to be the main sponsor and look after me, which has changed my life at the end of the day. So I've got a huge appreciation when it comes down to it, because I've had both sets of scales. I've been desperate and needing for stuff to be able to continue to do what I was doing, to now I'm at the point that Texo allows me the complete freedom to be able to do what I love to do. So anything given back, and especially wearing and representing Texo, means a huge part to me, because everybody has role models when they're growing up, but when it comes to, for instance, like Aberdeen's not a massive driving area in sport. When it comes down to the Aberdeen football team, maybe have one or two people that come or go every century, really, that kind of takes that level. And
they'd probably like it more regularly, but
oh, definitely. But to have a community basis where you can give back to everybody, like, it's not just professional sports that Texo Foundation obviously gives back. They've done loads of things with school, different events. That's what makes a community when it comes down to it. That Aberdeen is a very well looked after place. It's great for obviously the oil and gas, the offshore. It's what it's really known for, but it's really hard to take the next level steps, especially in sport or as an individual sport, for instance, like myself. But just having a company like Texo to be able to make it possible and to be associated with them just fills me with pride, to then not only have them with me, but for me to be able to then help and give back for their side of things also. So as soon as the offshore Europe had came up, as soon as I'd said, I'll come out and do it, I'd arrived early, and I was only going to be there for a couple of hours. Turned out I was there for the whole day.
And the next day.
I loved it so much I came back the next day. But that's just because it's not just a business. It's not just a transaction of, this is what I give you and this is what you get in return. It's open. Texo's helping me out with more things outside of the traditional what we had set out to do, and if I can give them anything back, then that's all I want to do.
It was lovely. It was lovely to see, someone who's a high sports person truly enjoying the fact that the people around, it's the fans that make the sport. Otherwise, who are you performing for?
Very much so.
And they were just, the majority of, especially there was a lot of women.
I think it was you that was dragging them over.
who sort of like, it's Dean, and a lot of guys were just like, holding the shields, and they just, belts, and they all wanted to be part of it. It was a really special occasion. What's the future hold?
The future for myself, and the immediate future, is get back out as soon as possible. I've got my fight the 10th of February that I'm in full preparations for just now. Get that one out of the way, and I've got another fight booked in very straight away after it. Build a bit of momentum, have a good 2024. Get back in. I had injuries picked up. I've had a bit of inactivity the year before with possible fights. Nowhere near the amount of activity that I would like to have done. I've kind of been stop-start. So for myself, consistency is the first thing that I really want to get in activity, and I want to get onto the TV side of things for the next year. I want to put Aberdeen boxing right up on the map when it comes down to it. It's good having events up here, but me taking that move down to London to build the connections was something that was phenomenal, because nobody from, everybody thinks from Glasgow and Edinburgh, anything above that is the Highlands. There's sheep running about everywhere. It doesn't get enough traction is what it does. Yeah. And we've got a lot of talent, especially in Scotland, but even in the northern part of Scotland, that it needs somebody to almost take that leap to get traction started. And Lee McAllister was that brilliant associate for it, had some great fights, winning Commonwealth titles. But then since Lee, there hasn't really been anybody. It's kind of like before Lee, there wasn't really much. Lee did really well for in his career what it was, and then there hasn't really been anybody since. So it's like a stop-start. And when it comes down to anybody, like I was saying again, Scotland is Glasgow and Edinburgh based. It does come to that, but most of the UK boxing scene is south of the border. Right. Yeah. So if I can. My big association, or the big thing I really want to do, is obviously win the British title, bit of legacy for myself, but also bring big time boxing back up to Aberdeen and get them as much traction as possible. Right. Well, you got an opportunity to push your next fight and to sell some tickets. So when is it? So I'm fighting the 10th of February at the Ordo House Hotel. So I'm in full training for that. It's an 8-rounder that I'm going to be fighting in against a good competitive opponent. Win that one, take a week or so off, and then we've got a bigger one that's waiting to be announced. I'll keep that close to the chest for the next one. But the 10th of February is looking like it's going to be a great show, especially for Aberdeen boxing. I think there's 2 or 3 people who's going to be making their pro debuts as well. So to have them on a bigger show, a show that's going to sell out very quickly for it, to help give them a platform also. So when is the next fight? The 10th of February. Brilliant. Dean, thank you ever so much. It's brilliant. A pleasure. Cheers, bud. Nice one.